Well, the folks who rate us, set to dump on us, ratings agency Moody's is now ready with this warning to Congress. Raise this debt ceiling or we hit the roof. My next guest says forget the rating, just cut the debt right now and make it a moot point. Ohio Republican Congressman Jim Jordan, in fact, has a three-pronged plan to do just that. Congressman, good to have you. Let's get right to it. What do you do first?
Cut spending. I mean, it's real simple. Cut spending in fiscal year 2012, reduce it enough that you cut the deficit in half, cap spending as a percentage of GDP, get to our historic levels of between 18 and 20%. We're at 24% right now. Bring it down, ratchet it down each year. And then most importantly, use this historic moment, this defining moment to actually, for the first time in American history, get a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution through the House and the Senate. Send it out to the states.
That's great. But to the first, cut the deficit in half. Or with $1.5 trillion deficit, you would cut $750 billion right off.
No. What? No, you don't have to do just a total subtraction problem, because we're going to have some economic growth according to CBO. We're going to have some revenue increase. You got to cut about $300 to $350 billion.
When you say revenue increase, so you're going to raise taxes?
No. You're going to have now.
What's the growth you assume?
We're using CBO numbers, Neil. CBO says we got a $1.5 trillion a $1 trillion deficit. You don't have to cut $750 billion to cut the deficit in half. You got to cut about $350 billion, because you're going to have some growth in revenue out there, not from raising taxes, just a natural growth coming into the Treasury. But you do have to cut spending at a big amount, $350 billion approximately, to get the deficit cut in half in 1 year. But we think the situation warrants that. And again, the American people understand this, but probably most importantly, the folks who look at this stuff, and you know this, understand it better than anyone. Standard & Poor's has said just 8 weeks ago that the credit outlook for the United States of America, first time in 70 years, is now negative. So it's not politicians just talking about how bad it is.
No, Congress, don't get me wrong. I admire what you're doing, and you're putting pen to paper, and you're risking putting your neck out there, the very cuts that are going to expose you to all sorts of crazy critics. Maybe you'll get a commercial done on you throwing someone off a cliff. but having said that, I do think it's a little optimistic in this regard, that you're making the assumption that if you cut $350 billion, no slouch figure, I might remind you.
No,
that will spur these revenues enough to cut the deficit in half. And you're hanging on the CBO, the same CBO that your party's been very, very critical of, from judging and measuring everything from the president's health care package to the oomph we get from his stimulus package.
No, good point, Neil. But remember, that's just part of our plan. You also send a message to the market. You send a message to the whole world if you actually, for the first time in American history, get a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution, passed through the House and Senate, send out to the states for ratification. That sends a huge message, and I think has a positive impact on economic growth, as well as capping spending and beginning. We've been at somewhere between 18 and 20% of gross domestic product. The whole package is good for economic growth, sends the right kind of message as well. And that's why we're, frankly, the only plan out there: cut, cap, and balance. Cut spending, cap spending, balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. We've got 100 members who've signed a letter that will go to the Speaker that says this is the kind of plan that makes sense.
I'm sorry, I don't want to jump with you, but Nancy Pelosi, the Democratic leader, the former Speaker, is speaking now at this powwow with the President, which he was meeting with a lot of your colleagues. She has been saying about some of the cuts your party has envisioned that you don't want to go too far, that in a still fragile economy, I'm paraphrasing here, sir, you don't want to push it over the edge. What do you say?
They've been using that line for 3 years, and if big government spending, Neil, we're going to get us out of this mess, for goodness sake, we've been out of it a long time ago, because that's all the government's done for the past 3 years. And unfortunately, it started with Republicans. It started with the last administration, but this administration and the former Pelosi Congress took it to a whole new level.
Well, then are you surprised that Ms. Pelosi said of this meeting that just wrapped up with the President, all these freshmen, the whole Moody's thing, the threatened downgrade and all that, never came up, didn't come up at all?
Well, I'm not surprised
that was the Geithner, I'm sorry, the Geithner meeting. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that Democrats want to continue big government spending. That's what they believe in, big government. They want big government spending. Even if it doesn't work, they say, well, the reason it didn't work is because we didn't do enough of it, and they want to spend more, even though that never works, and they just keep chasing their tail. So I'm not surprised that that's what they're after.
Yeah, but that's kind of like the elephant in the room, right? I mean, that was a big news story.
Well, right. I mean, it is, but I think that is the bigger concern, I think, is the long-term debt crisis we're going to reach where now economists are pretty much reached a consensus on this. Within 2 to 3 years, we're going to have the big debt crisis. Never mind this debt ceiling issue that's coming up over the next month. The bigger thing is if we don't fix things, if we don't put our country on the right kind of fiscal path, we're going to have the big debt crisis, comparable to what Greece and Portugal and Spain, these countries went through over the last couple of years. We're going to have that in the greatest country ever. That's what we got to forestall. And it starts by putting in the kind of plan that we've talked about, cut, cap, and balance.
Well, I always admire people who put something out there. You can rip them asunder all you want, but you put something out there. Congressman, thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Neil. Good to be with you.